Most CX teams, customer experience teams, fail to prove the ROI of their efforts because they're hunting for the wrong thing. They try to cram the value of experience into a single metric, usually NPS. But leaders do not fund sentiment, they fund outcomes. And the truth is, CX ROI isn't one number, isn't one outcome. It's three different signals that together show how experience actually drives the business. Okay, in this video, I'm going to break down the three lenses that I use and I'm seeing every mature CX organization use to quantify impact. Not the vanity metrics, not the dashboards with a lot of bars and colors. The real indicators that matter to product, finance, and executive teams. Okay, you will walk away with practical system level view of how I'm thinking about CX ROI, how to measure customer outcomes, how to think about operational efficiency and strategic influence. When you use all three, the value of experience becomes visible across the whole organization. All right, lens one, customer outcomes. If you want to close this link between experience, work, and revenue, this is it, no doubt. Measurable shifts in what customers actually do. Take reduced churn risk. Every journey has phases where customers silently decide to stay or leave. When you resolve friction at those moments, churn probability drops, not because NPS goes up, but because the customer's path gets easier. Churn reduction is one of the most direct ROI levers you have. And it's almost always tied to experience fixes, not marketing pushes. The problem is the moment a customer churns is not the moment when they decide to churn. That happens upstream in the experience. So your job is to find where in the journey that original friction starts to occur. The second thing is faster time to value. And this is often overlooked when we think about revenue. When customers reach their first successful outcome, the smallest job to be done they have achieved by hiring your product or service, sooner retention increases, advocacy grows, and expansion becomes more predictable. So time to value is the heartbeat of loyalty. If your onboarding, support, or product experience shortens that window, you can quantify the lift usually immediately. Now, the other part is the increased upsell or cross-sell probability, especially in subscription businesses. This is great, but in insurance businesses, this is even greater because there's strong evidence that journey-led works moves these numbers. Organizations that structure work around the customer report like 15% increase in cross-sell and upsell because they can focus on the high-value interactions because they are removing the low-value ones and moving them to self-serve or moving them to let AI handle these tasks for you. A direct behavioral shift driven by reduced friction and clearer customer expectations leads to increased cross-sell and upsell probability. So all fine, all nice. I'll give you some examples in a second, but I need the second lens to do that because now we talked about customer outcomes, but usually customer experience is an inside job. So we need to look at the second lens for ROI, which is the operational efficiency lens. And this is where it becomes very clear. The cost of inconsistency inside the organization is usually what drives the lack of drive creates improper customer outcomes. So three signals matter. First one, easy, avoidable support volume. Think about the low value calls. If we don't have them, we have more time to have high value interaction. Okay, so this typically ends up in a contact center in the customer support area. Every call, every chat, every escalation is a signal of a broken experience. Upstream, right? It's not because people are thinking about this as part of their experience. They're calling, they're chatting, they're asking because something is not right. Customer experience teams that fix upstream's issues reduce cost without cutting service quality, and the business feels it immediately. Typical example would be in banking. I was working with one retail bank. They had low value calls rising in the debit card part of the business, and they couldn't point a finger of what is exactly happening. So they started digging. Customer experience team brought data teams and design teams together, and they did the discovery work. And they realized there were a couple of high friction points in that experience that led to a lot of those calls. Now, what those calls were about, they already knew. But what was behind it, they had to dig deeper in. So one example would be the bank had a wonderful service. They're sending you a new debit card when this one expires ahead of the expiration date. But if you moved homes in between, then obviously your card get blocked because the new card was sent to your old address, leading you in the moment when you're about to make a payment, say you're in the supermarket with a blocked card. What do? You call the bank. They are able to resolve the issue on the spot, but they do incur the cost because they weren't understanding the problem firsthand, which was upstream in the journey. And this team in particular found a couple of friction points in the experience, fixed them, reduced calls with like 7,000 a month, which is like millions of cost at the end of every year. The duplication of work across teams is the second part of this. When product shipped something support wasn't ready for, marketing launches something operations can't fulfill, you pay the price of rework. Journey alignment prevents this. Consistency isn't a nice to have, it's one of the biggest operational savings by the enterprise. So, an airline example, they have an ancillary team that is taking care of additional baggage booking and revenue between the moment you book a ticket and the moment you take the flight. So this particular team saw revenue from baggage booking and the baggage bookings themselves drop significantly. And it was all hands on deck. The people responsible, the data team, the design team, everyone would call to the meeting to say, hey, there's a big problem. We're seeing a revenue decline. We can't figure out what's happening. We have to act now. Until someone said, hey, let's look at the broader booking journey, the end to end experience, and see what happened. And they were able to understand that another team had just launched a new promotion. During the general booking flow, customers who booked a basic airline ticket for a small fee could upgrade. And with that upgrade, they could get an additional bag. And a lot of people did it. So lo and behold, the revenue and the baggage booking overall was not down. It was actually up. But for that particular team, while they thought they had a problem, looking at the whole, they didn't have a problem. So the risk was if they didn't have a journey-centric approach, they would have gone down the rabbit hole, do more data discovery, do more research, start funding initiatives, start building things, bring in their external agency, potentially spending millions on a problem that wasn't there. Duplicating work across teams is a real problem. And the other part is delay driven waste, as I call it. Experience friction in the journey slows teams down as much as customers. Missed handoffs, unclear ownership, contradictory KPIs, all of these create organizational drag. And when you fix the journey, internal velocity increases and costs drop. Wonderful example. Once I was working with a telco, I had the pleasure to engage with them, and they said, hey, we know network coverage is a big issue. I mean, this was one specific country that they had network coverage issues, and that was causing a lot of churn. But there was also a part of churn that was caused by other things in the experience. But because they haven't agreed on a consistent way to prioritize across teams, basically what happened was they were perfectly aware of all the big problems in the customer experience outside network coverage, which was typically a hardware problem. But in the customer experience, they were aware of communication issues, billing issues, things about the customer experience they could easily fix. But because they didn't have something to prioritize, the executive told me for the last 12 months, we just haven't done anything because they couldn't agree on how to prioritize and therefore nothing happened. So operational efficiency, ROI is simple. Reduce friction in the system and the system gets cheaper to run. Customer experience is one of the few functions that can see the whole system end to end, which makes them incredibly powerful. So that brings me to the third lens, which is strategic influence. And this is the least measured, least discussed, but most valuable form of ROI in CX. And it shows up in three places. The first one is obvious, clear prioritization. Most companies, like the telco I was talking about, they waste resources, not because teams are bad, but priorities are misaligned, are not even created. A strong journey framework brings clarity. It reveals what matters most, where the highest leverage opportunities live, and which bets should come off the roadmap entirely. Better prioritization is a direct driver of ROI, even if it never shows up on any dashboard or is hard to quantify. So a question for you would be, did we map the decision-making process, decision-making journey for our cross-functional initiatives? Like, how do we know things get done when there's not like one team responsible for a particular thing, but we need a couple of teams together to say, yes, this is a priority? My estimation will be, we don't know. It's different for different teams. And therefore, if this isn't in place, that's a clear signal that you can do better there. So the other part is faster decision making. When different teams share the same view of the customer journey, debates shrink because we have the same context. Rework drops, meeting gets shorter because we all see the same thing from the same place. Decisions accelerate because the context is shared, right? Strategic influence is about organizational velocity. Velocity compounds. So do it once, do it twice, do it 3 times. People will get used to it and it will be faster and smarter the next time. The easiest way to quantify this, if you want to, is thinking about the cycle time from an actual insight to implementation in your organization. And I don't mean, hey, we already wanted to do this. Can you validate it? No. Novel insight or new pain point emerges. There's an insight into why it matters, and we get something done. Like, how long does it take? A month, a quarter, half year? Or we don't have a good way to measure this? All good. But if you start to think about the cycle from insight to implementation and you have a proper way to understand that, you are able to understand, are we making decisions faster and then therefore benefiting the whole, or we are not moving the needle on our decision making velocity. And the last one is reduce political friction. This one is harder because cross functional tension is expensive. Every stalled initiative, every duplicated effort, every why are we doing this cycle drains resources, right? Journey alignment removes that ambiguity because teams have the shared language, have the shared vocabulary to talk about the same things at the same level. Marketing doesn't talk about funnel when sales talks about pipeline and customer experience talks about journey. It gives everyone a common language and a neutral source of truth, right? Neutral is the key word here. It doesn't have to be end to end agreed upon, and it doesn't have to be the single source of truth. But if it's neutral and different teams can find value in it, that means that we have something that can remove the political friction that typically is happening between the different business units in an organization. So, question to ask is like, do we have an agreement that the journey is the way that we can all, and with all, I mean the departments that you cover, that we can all look at the customer journey context together? And it has measurable impact. Journey-led organizations see 3 times faster alignment across teams, and that compounds significantly in a large organization. It's a direct accelerator of decisions, delivery, and strategic clarity. So strategic influence ROI doesn't look like a spreadsheet. It looks like a company that stops tripping over itself. So why do you need all three? Customer outcomes show revenue signals, operational efficiencies, so cost signals, and strategic influence show velocity signals. Together, these three lenses provide a comprehensive approach to full stack ROI, if that's even a term. But I like it because we are not thinking about ROI as one number and we can express the impact we're making. No, we have a couple of lenses to look through to see, hey, are we making progress? Are we making an impact on the investments that we're making in terms of our team, in terms of our people, in terms of the tools we're using, and in terms of the time we spend on the initiatives? And they reflect how the enterprise actually creates value through customer behavior, organizational efficiency, and decision-making speed. No single metric can capture that, but the combination is hard for any executive team to ignore. So CX ROI becomes easy to prove when you stop trying to defend it with a single metric and instead show how the system behaves differently because of the way you work. Show the shift in customer behavior, the drop in operational waste, and the increase in organizational clarity. That's the way you can build your ROI story that an executive team, your leadership team actually believes because it matches their role. To close it off, if you want CX to be taken seriously, don't try to cram ROI into one single metric. Thinking impacting the business through customer experience isn't easy. In reality, it depends. But using these three lenses, customer outcomes, operational efficiencies, and strategic impact, will help you to define what makes sense for your organization and where to focus on next.